Hey guys, it's Coach Carroll here again with a short tutorial video over how to create parts within the assembly environment. Okay, now this is the exercise 2 in lab 5 with the CAM assembly. So at this point you should have already constrained all the parts, created the subassembly, grounded that subassembly, so now you can rotate this shaft and you can see the this vertical rod move up and down from this rotational motion of the camshaft there. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a handle that goes on the end of this hexagon head here. Okay. So I'll show you the finished product. What we're going to. I want to create something like this. I want to create a handle here that I can grab and rotate rather than having to grab this shaft itself. Okay. Now when I create this handle here, I'm going to isolate this handle. Let's isolate. I want this hole in the handle here to be the same size as this hexagon head here, so that it fits on snugly. It fits on. It fits well. Okay. So how could I do that? Well, one way to do that would be to go look at this shaft. Okay, come in the shaft. I could actually edit the shaft and go find out what is the diameter, what's the dimension of that hexagon head there. So I could right click on this part and let's edit that part, and then I could come find what extrusion makes that. See that? Extrusion 7 is what made that hexagon head. So if I expand that, here's sketch 7, and I see it's 10 millimeters there from flat to flat. Okay, so then I could go make a hole that has a hexagon head of 10 millimeters. If I click up here, this returns me back to the assembly environment. Notice I'm in the part editing environment right now. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the assembly environment. Well, what I just showed you is what I don't want to do. Okay, that's a long way to do things. I would like to just simply create a part within the assembly environment so that I can use this hexagon pattern that already exists and just use that to make my part from. Okay, so let's do that. Notice in the assembly environment there's two ways to put parts in. I could place a part, which is what you've done already, or I could create a part, and that's what I want to do here. Okay, so I'll hit create. And now this asks me for the new component name because I'm creating a part. I'm going to call this, let's say, the crank handle. Okay, I'll say crank handle 1. Now notice this is a standard part, and here says where the file is located, and by default it's in the same folder as your assembly file, and that's where you want to leave it. So I'll click OK here. Now, what does it tell me to do? If I look down here in the bottom, alright, it tells me to sketch or select the sketch plane for the base feature. Okay, so notice I can select some plane to start a sketch on. Well, I'm going to select the end plane here. Okay, so let's select that. Now notice when I click that, what did it do? It brought me into the part editing environment. I'm no longer in the assembly environment. Notice all the other parts in the assembly are kind of grayed out, right? And they're transparent. Okay, and notice over here the assembly environment is all gray in the part browser. Okay, so now I'm creating this part called the crank handle. Alright, so to create a part, let's start a 2D sketch. So I'll create a 2D sketch. Now what plane do I want to sketch on? Well, that plane that I selected earlier was the face, right? The face of that hexagon head. And so when I did that, it made these three planes here actually aligned with that face. So one of these planes, this plane here, is parallel to that face, and these two others are perpendicular to it. Okay, so that's why I selected that face. So I'm going to select this plane that's parallel to the face. So let's select that, and now I'm in the sketch mode here. Okay, so I want to create a sketch. Now I want to create a hexagon then, so I'm first going to draw the outline of this hexagon. Okay, and I want it to be the same size as the hexagon head that already exists on the shaft. So let's come over here to the sketch tool of a polygon. I'll click on that, and I want it to snap to the center. Notice my cursor turned green when it snapped to the center. Click there and start to drag out, and I want to snap to the edge here. Whoop. Is my cursor turning green? No, it's not. Notice it's not snapping. Right now, this sketch does not know where that the edge of this hexagon is. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to actually project this geometry into the sketch that I'm currently in. Okay. So if you come up here, there's this project geometry tool. Okay, let's click on the drop down arrow, and I'm going to select the first one. It says project geometry. Let's select that, and now whatever geometry I click, it's going to project it into the sketch that I'm editing. So I'm going to select this face. So I click on that, and notice you see these yellow lines now. I'm going to hit the escape button to get out of the project geometry tool. Hit escape, and notice these yellow lines. Now those yellow lines are actually in my sketch, and it's the same lines from this shaft here, so I didn't actually have to even draw that hexagon. I just projected the geometry from the shaft into my sketch. Okay, so I'm going to use that for the whole. So now I need to create an outline for the rest of the handle here. So I do not give any requirements for what the handle must look like. I just say it has to fit on the hexagon head, which we've already done by creating this hole. So I'm going to go through, let's create a circle here. I'm going to snap it in the center and just pull it somewhere out here. Now let's create a line. I want it to get on the circle here. So snap to the circle. I'm going to come out here, click once, and I'm going to click and hold so I can make a little semicircle there. Release my mouse button and then come up here and click on that circle. Okay. Now it's not exactly a good geometry yet, but that's okay. I can add constraints to make this look nicer. Okay. So I want this line to be tangent to this circle here. I want a smooth transition between this line and the circle. So let's click on the tangent constraint, and I want this line to be tangent with that circle. Click on that, and it made it tangent. Okay, my tangent constraint tool is still selected, so I want this line to be tangent with that circle. Okay, and the same down here. It's not a smooth transition. It looks like it, but it's not quite. Between that line and that line is not tangent. So let's say this line, I want it tangent with that, and it made it a smooth transition. Now this one might already be tangent. I think it is. Now I can check that by right clicking and hit show all constraints. Yeah, and you see this tangent constraint right here at this point. So this line and this line are tangent. So that tangent constraint was actually added in when I created the sketch. Okay. I'm going to hide the constraints now. Right click and hit hide all constraints. I want to trim this piece of the line out. So I'm going to hit the trim tool. Now come down here. I want to trim this part, that dotted part. So I'm going to click out here, hold my mouse button down, and drag a line across that. Yep, notice it disappeared. I just trimmed it. Click Escape to exit my trim tool. And now I have a nice 2D profile that I can extrude to start to make a handle. So I'll finish the sketch, and let's extrude this profile here. Okay, I'm actually going to reverse the direction. Let's reverse the direction here, and 10 millimeters is fine for me. Okay, that looks okay. 10 millimeters. So there we go. I've started to create a handle now. I'm going to add. Let's create a handle on this surface here that extends. We can make it easier to grab, let's say. So I'll create a sketch there. Let's just come make a circle here. Okay, we can add a dimension to it. Let's make it 10 millimeter diameter. It's up to you. Okay, I don't give specific requirements for this. Now let's extrude that, and let's extrude it, let's say 60 millimeters. Okay, so now I have a handle there. Okay, very nice. Now let's return to the assembly environment now that I've created my part. So let's click return up here in the top right. Notice I've come back to the assembly environment now. Okay, so let's look over here in my part browser. Look, here's this new part that I've created here called the crank handle, but it has a funny symbol next to it that the other parts don't have. Those little arrows there. It says adaptive. Okay, I'm going to right click and turn that off. Okay. Now, what happens if I try to grab this handle and try to rotate? Whoop. Look at that, it just moves around. Okay, now why does it do that? Well, because I have not constrained this handle to actually fit on the shaft. I made the sketch from it, but I have not, made the part using that shaft, but I have not constrained it. I'm going to open up this, let's expand this crank handle and see what constraint is there. There's a flush constraint already. So that's a flush constraint between, we'll see what it is, the face of my handle and the face that I started the sketch on right here. Okay, so that's already constrained, so I just want to constrain this hole to be on that hole. Alright, so let's hit constrain, and let's say I want this face here to match up with this face. Okay. Hit OK there. Is it fully constrained yet? Let's grab this. No, not yet. See, I can still slide it this way. Okay. Now notice I can't slide it left or right like this because of this flush constraint. Okay. Sorry here. So what does this mate says that those two faces are constrained. You can see that a little better. Those faces. Now let's go ahead and constrain another face here. I'll hit constrain, and this time let's do this face, and that corresponds to, I have to get the corresponding face over here in the hole, corresponds to that face, and it's locked in place. Let's hit OK. Now this part is fully constrained. Okay, so I can zoom out and you can see I can grab the handle and rotate. And there you go. So we've created a part within the assembly environment, okay, and we've actually added constraints then so that it fits appropriately with the assembly. Now don't forget to actually add your iProperties of the part, guys. Okay, so I could right click on that part and click on iProperties and go through, make sure to set what the material is here. Okay, so I need to add those in. Okay. Alright, thanks a lot, guys. Hope that helped you.